Our next presenter is Dr. Julien Brugniaux, who's from the School of Science and Health. And Julien's topic is turning up the heat on diabetes. Thanks, Julien.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Good. So diabetes is obviously a major issue. I think everybody is fully aware of that. It is a worldwide problem, but to which extent is it an issue is not necessarily clear to everybody, so I'll try to enlighten people a little bit about that. As you can see from that slide, the World Health Organization has evaluated that about 422 million people worldwide are suffering from diabetes. It's a big number, obviously, which can be hard to comprehend in a country of just under 25 million people. So just to give you an idea, you take the whole of the States, the whole of Russia, and that gives you about a number of people, of patients with diabetes worldwide. So it is quite significant. Obviously, you can hear I'm not from here, and being a foreigner, I assumed that Australia was all about healthy, fit, tan people exercising along the beach in Bondi. And needless to say, I was absolutely shocked when I found out that about 1 in 4 Australians over the age of 25 has diabetes or is on the cusp of developing diabetes. And when you take the Aboriginal population, the figures are even worse than that. They have about 3 times more risk of developing diabetes than the rest of the population. So it is very, very sobering. Then when you look at that map here on that slide and look at the local figures, it really turns out that the Greater Western Sydney is a diabetes hotspot, as it's called. And what they mean by that is this area in red has figures that are beyond national average, so the risk is even greater when you are living in this particular area. And as if it wasn't enough, diabetes is actually on the rise, and the figures, the projections are that by 2040, you will have about 600 million people from the 420 that we have at the minute. So if you think about it, between now and the end of this presentation, 1 new patient will develop diabetes. And that's really the extent of the problem, and that's where the interest is coming from. As you can see, apologies for the graphic content here on the slide, but that is the reality of it. Diabetes is a very complex disease to manage, and patients are suffering from many complications. Some of them are cerebrovascular diseases, such as stroke or dementia that Mark has already mentioned. That's actually a side interest of mine. But the one that I want to talk about today is foot ulcers. And these foot ulcers are, as you can see, just wounds that don't heal properly. And patients are developing these heals over and over again. About a third of the patients are developing these ulcers. To give you an idea, that would be the whole of Russia having at least 1 foot looking like that. That's pretty terrific. And terrific in negative way, obviously. So once the worst is that once they start to develop these ulcers, they come back, and usually they are at a much greater risk of actually having an amputation and losing the few toes, if not the entire limb. So you can imagine that the health costs are absolutely exponential with the rise of diabetes. And clearly, because these ulcers are coming back, the care is not particularly efficient, so and expensive, of course. And where I'm coming from is actually having a completely different approach, because what we are suggesting is very simple and indeed very cheap. And the solution that we are offering is simply to have somebody immersing one's foot into a hot bath for about 45 minutes at a time. And there is emerging evidence showing that that actually will allow us to improve the healing process. The mechanism behind it is quite simple. When you get exposed to a warmer temperature, your blood vessels are opening up. So you are able to deliver more oxygen to the tissues, and that contributes to the healing process. And that's something that patients with diabetes usually don't have. They tend to have very, very stiff vessels affecting the delivery of the oxygen, and that's part of the reason why they develop these ulcers. So of course, in terms of the consequences, we are aiming to improve patient quality. That's probably number one, even beyond having access to good quality research and publications. We really want to improve the quality of life of the patients. If we are able to managing that, or should I say when we will be able to manage to do that, we will decrease the health cost. And just to give you an idea of the magnitude, it's still very much in the inception, early stages of this project, but nonetheless, the clinic we are working with at Royal North Shore Hospital has 2,500 visits a day, so the impact is already there. And through collaborations around the Campbelltown area, we're planning to develop that further and to implement that treatment further. I'm also collaborating with colleagues from Western Australia, Professor Danny Green, as well as colleagues in Canada, Phil Ainsley, who are both world authorities in vascular physiology. And I'm planning to extend these projects in a much broader context. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the people I'm working with, mainly Fran and Shaw, Debbie Turner from the school, and Ian Reid, who is the head of the clinic at the Royal North Shore Hospital. Thanks very much.
From the panel, Jill.
So I've got a multi-pronged question. The first part of it is the engagement of the people that have been affected. So have you had feedback from them on the impact of the treatment, given it's so simple? And the second one is what are you going to do to really disseminate the outcomes of this going forward?
So one thing I didn't probably make clear enough is that we are at very early stages. So we only have that clinic at the minute and only preliminary data on this particular population. There is stronger evidence with other patients suffering from peripheral arterial disease, which is a stiffening of the artery I was talking about. But nothing long-term. So really for us now is to establish the technique and determine really how many repetitions we need to really have a significant impact on the recurrence, more so than on the acute phase. And then based on that, mid to long-term, we are aiming to hopefully be able to influence policies. Because if we can implement that, again, as we were saying, because it's so cheap, it's easy to scale up, and that would be a much more efficient than other techniques that are used, such as hyperbaric oxygen and things like that.